Turn on the recorder. We get to do for 5 hours one of my favorite things to do. I love eating ice cream. I love hanging out with my son and my daughter and my wife. I love sleeping when I get a chance. And I love programming with Go. It's like that old Duke Nukem video game. Did any of you guys ever play Duke Nukem back in the day? Old school first-person shooter video game. And it'd start out and say something like, I'm Duke Nukem. I love to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. I love to chew bubblegum and code and Go. And I'm all out of bubblegum. So we get to do some Go. We're going to be working out of the Tom Cloud Goes to 11. Golang Web Dev. If you're stumbling across this on the internet, glory, glory, hallelujah. Praise the forces that be. You have just found the best code pathway for learning web development with Go anywhere in the world. And on YouTube, we're in class right now. My students crack up at my antics. All 4 of them. And on YouTube, we have Golang Web Programming Fall 2016. These are the best videos out there in the world for learning web dev with Go. I'm currently working, before I finish that, I got to say the next thing. Before I say the next thing, I got to, well, there's a debate tonight. We're not doing anything. No. We already know who won, and it's whoever you like. Follow me on Twitter. Okay, that's the last sort of, what do you call it? Self-promotion thing. You should totally follow me on Twitter because I need about 30,000, not 2,000. So just do it out of the kindness of your heart. So the next thing that you should know is that on Amazon, there's this guy's book. It's pretty good. I've read 130 pages of it so far. Golang Web Dev. And it's this guy right here. So this is like another good resource if you want to learn Go Web Dev. Check out this book. And if you use this URL, it'll send me $1 because I created a little affiliates link. So let me show you the URL. And it'll also be resources for you to other stuff. So you just got a lot of cool stuff. So you could go to this document, W1HFBF. And it'll bring you here, and then you could scroll down and use this link to buy that book, and it sends me $1. And that's like a third of the way, well, a fifth of the way to getting a good beer. All right. So the English woman finds that funny because they like pints in England. So we've been through all the handle and handler funk and handler. Type handler is what? A little bit of a review. Type handler, you should all be, if the police officer pulls you over and says, son, ma'am, you've been drinking? I've only had one beer, officer. Can you tell me what type handler is?
It's an R and a W.
It's an R and a W. So type handler defines, it defines functionality, it defines methods. If you have these methods, interface says what? What's an interface say? Hey, baby. If you have these methods, then you're my type. You didn't get that one last week, did you? Did you hear that one?
No.
Interface says, hey, baby, if you have these methods, then you're my type. That's the best coding joke I've heard in a week. So we learned all about handler, the handler interface. That's the entry point for the net HTTP package in godoc.org, the standard library. Standard library is on golang.org, but you can find on godoc.org the standard library and third-party packages. The net HTTP package, the entry point is the handler interface. What is the handler interface? Nina, tell me. What is the handler interface?
For handling HTTP requests.
For handling HTTP requests, that's a pretty good answer. I want the specifics. What method? What is the identifier of the method in the handler interface? The name of the function, the name of the method that a type needs to have. Patrick.
Serve HTTP.
Serve HTTP. And then what parameters does it need to take?
Response writer and request.
A response writer and a request. And the request is what? It's not just any request, it's a pointer.
Pointer to a
Right? So that's the entry point, and let's just look at it so visually it's getting into our head. And at the end of the semester, if that police officer pulls you over and says, "Ma'am, can you tell me what a handler interface is?" You can say, "Yes, officer. It's any type that has the method serve HTTP, taking a response writer and a pointer to request as parameters, arguments, whatever," right? Then that implements the handler interface. And the reason that's important is because we do a lot of things with handlers. And so, like, if we look at listen and serve wants a handler. Handler, handler, Roger, Roger, handler, handler. That's just the identifier. This is the type. It's like X int. The type is int. The variable which gets passed in becomes X. The value gets assigned to the variable X. That's the identifier. The value gets assigned to the variable handler. That's the identifier. The type is handler. Listen and serve takes a handler. So that's kind of cool. So that's one of the things that we use, because we could use listen and serve and put the address in. It could be double quotes, it's a string, colon 8080. We're listening on port 8080, TCP port 8080. And here is the handler. If we give listen and serve the nil is a handler, what's that mean? Listen and serve, we pass in nil as a handler.
Not giving any method.
Okay, we're not given any method, but what happens? Pass in nil.
You're using the default serve mux.
Yeah! Default serve mux is being used, right? So we could use our default serve mux, and if we're using, so we pass in nil to listen and serve, and you could read about it there, like if you pass in nil, it says right here, right? If you pass in nil, listen and serve, handler is typically nil, in which case default serve mux is used. Handler is typically nil, in which case default serve mux is used. If we're using default serve mux, then we could use handle, right? And we could pass in a route, /, double quotes, /, just anything that comes into my website, handled by /. And then we could get more specific, /dog, anything that comes in at /dog, we will then give it another handler. All right, and we'll see how we could do another handler. We already saw that, right? And so we could have create a type hot doggy int. That's a type, and then we could attach a method to it, func, and then the receiver h hot doggy, right? And then whatever the serve HTTP response writer pointer to a request, and then just some kind of code in there. And then we could create a variable of type hot doggy, and then we could pass that in as the handler. It is a handler because it implements the serve HTTP method, and cool, right? It will handle /dog. Do you guys get all that in your head when I say that? No. So that example was like way back 6 weeks ago, where we did right here, understanding net HTTP package, handle func, net HTTP package. I think it's right here, handler. And then listen and serve, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So there we're passing in D, you know, and that's the handler. So that's not getting nil. If I wanted to do nil, now I'm doing nil, so I'm using default serve mux, so I'd have to do HTTP handle, and that's going to take a pattern and then a handler. So the pattern would be dog, and the handler would be D, right? So that's going to do the same thing. And I could just have another one here, there, right? C, and if I wanted to, I could create another one here, and this could be C hot cat. All right. So that's how we do our routes. And that's why handler is so important. This is a handler, right? That takes a handler, or nil. This takes a handler. We could also do handle func, and we could clean this up. And so handle func is going to take what? Handle func, uptown, funk you up. Uptown, funk you up. It's going to take a function. That's a type right there, like int, string, bool. That is a type. It's func with these parameters. Response writer, pointer to request. Why do you see response writer and request stuff all over the place in the NetHTTP package? Big hint, big hint, big hint. That's the web. Client-server architecture. Clients making requests, servers responding. So when we're writing code for that, we need a request and a response. So you see request and response all over in here. Get it? Okay? Dream about it. 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 I've annoyed everybody watching this online. So that takes a different type than a handler. That is a different type. So I could come back here and I could say handle func. This no longer is, that's not that function. To make it a function, I could do this. All right, I could just say, hey, this is like, you know, this would be cat, or I'll just call this index. INDX, whatever. Index, that's a good one. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. Get rid of that and that. Get rid of that. Call this one, this function, dog, big D, big D, whatever. Right? And this is that function. It's an identifier with those parameters, response writer and request. An identifier with those parameters, func with these parameters, response writer and a request. All right? So that's func big D, that's func index. I don't need these things anymore. And with handle func, I could do handle func ID INDX and handle func big D. And this needs to be func. So that's kind of cleaner code. Very cool. So that's handle func, index and big D. How would I change this? Handle func takes that function. How would I change this so that it would work like that? With only casting this to another type, I could say HTTP handle func, handler func, and that turns that function into a handler. Handle takes a handler. Handler func turns this function into a handler func. This is why, right? So we look at handler func. Right here, handler func. Handler func is, the underlying type is this. Well, that's that type we just used when we were using handle func. Handle func, right? So handler func is a type with that underlying type. It has this method attached to it, which means that a handler func is a handler. So I could take a function with this signature, cast it to this, cast, conversion, assertion, convert it to this. Go likes conversion, not casting. Convert it to this, that word. And it's conversion and it's assertion. This is conversion. You can convert it to that, and then that would also work. Handle this. But that's just funky code, but it's nice to know you could do that because sometimes you'll have a function like this with that signature, and you want it to be a handler, so you could cast it and make it a handler. How many people? That's good review, and it's like, okay, okay, okay. You're just following, you're following, it makes sense. Alex? Cool. Gentry? You're way beyond this, dude. He's like, dude, I've already written stuff to process email. What the hell are you showing me this for? All right, so that's a little bit of a review of the NetHTTP and the handler, and I think that's good for the first video. Let's call it review.